Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Overhauled with the Diesel Queen, put on by Diesel Laptops. Today I am here with Daniel, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about how he contributes into the industry, more on a social media side of it. So Daniel, why don't you introduce yourself and let us kind of tell us how you got into the industry, how you got interested in it, and then what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm Daniel. I run a company called Blue Collar Brands, and we essentially help good blue collar companies who care about their people show off what it is that their people do and help attract and retain good people. My background, though, I did not grow up blue collar at all. I didn't have an uncle in construction or anything like that. I actually picked up a camera and started a video production company out of high school. So almost the opposite thing I think that you could pick from going out and working with your hands or being in the trades. But I did the video production thing for a while, and I ended up doing a project for this local civil construction company, which they reached out to me, and I was like, why do you need a video? You're a construction company. People know what you do. And then I thought about it a little bit and I was like, I don't know what you do actually. And so I went out on site with them, and they were building a subdivision. So they were doing all of the utilities, all of the earthwork. And I remember going out and just seeing, they're putting pipe in the ground, they're doing cut and fill. They had, all of this stuff going on this massive site that will, what was one day going to have homes on it. And it just opened my eyes completely to a whole different side of the world that I never thought about. Because most people, if they're not in the blue collar world, and I'm going to generalize, but I was one of them, so I think I can say it, like most people don't realize what in the world it takes for you to have power or flush toilets or drive down the road or whatever. And that's just like on a your own house, basis. But like if you look into all of the other jobs in the blue collar world, you have people doing linemen, you have welders, you have mining, you have farming, you have all sorts of shit. And every basic necessity that I have, that you need, comes from somebody working with their hands in the blue collar world. So my eyes were like opened to that. Obviously the work and the equipment is badass. I got to be around a lot of heavy equipment and stuff that I had never been exposed to before. And then the biggest thing though for me was the people. There's this societal stigma that I don't think most people's parents teach it to them, but I think society just kind of teaches you that if you go out and work with your hands, or that if you don't go to college or whatever, that you maybe ran out of options, or maybe you're not going to make as much money, or you might be a little dirty. And like that's what society ingrains in kids going through school. And I was one of those kids who was like, oh yeah, like I had this idea of who blue collar people were, or what a blue collar person was, and it was somebody that maybe I didn't want to hang around. And I just remember having my that stereotype totally flipped on its head when I was talking to people out in the field, even on that first day. And over the past 4 or 5 years, I've realized, man, like 95% of the people that I talk to who work out in the field, work with their hands, are blue collar folks who work hard, do really important shit. They would give me the shirt off their back after like 10 minutes of talking to them. And that's just not true about, somebody, your average office, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the case. So that's kind of my background now. That was the first project I ever did in the construction world. And then shortly after, I stopped doing work with any other industry because I just fell in love with the construction world, the people, and kind of built my mission around helping blue collar people feel seen, valued, and heard, because they do really important shit and they're not seen by society. They're really not valued by society, even though everything that society has is built on top of the hard work that they do. And then trying to help them be heard so that their stories can be told, and so that they want to keep doing the work that they're doing, so other people want to come in and do the work as well, and just so that they have a better quality of life working in the trades.
So how do you promote the blue collar? How, like, in what ways do you contribute to promotion of blue collars? Like, do you just do videos when people ask you to do videos for them, or do you go out of your way to make your own, or like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, so it started out where people would ask, "Hey, we need a video, or we need, we need you to come and take pictures of this or that." And so I would go and I'd do a project. Now it's more of, I'll have companies that I work with on a regular basis. So a lot of the companies that we work with are on retainer, and so we actually go out. We go out every single month or every quarter, depending on if they're local to Central Texas, which is where I live, or if they are out of state, we go all across the country. And so we go and we make content. So we do photos and videos, and we go and meet the people who are actually out doing the work. And I'm spending, 5 to 15 minutes with each of the people that I photograph to talk to them and hear their story. And then as soon as I'm done talking to them, I write their story down, and then I write down their name, and I attach that to a photo so that I can go
Oh, that's
back.
cool.
Yeah, so I can go back and I actually will write social media posts for the companies and post them as well, so that their people's stories are actually being told, and so that also, they can actually share that with their family, with their friends, and people can see what it is that they do and why it's important. Because I think oftentimes, I mean, I hear this all the time. My family has no idea what I do here every day, even though they're out
Yeah.
busting their ass all day long. For
Yeah.
everybody else is good. Their family has no idea what they're doing, and their friends oftentimes don't know what they're doing unless their friends are in the same line of work. And so, being able to kind of give them that voice and give them like a thank you almost of like, hey, you're doing something that a lot of people don't want to come out and do. Um, Here, like let's put credit where credit's due. Um, and so that's kind of what I do. We also build new websites for some of the companies that we work with too, just so that they can help, just to help them bring in more applicants and that kind of thing.
That's cool. Because I mean, like you said, you're right. Most people don't. It's very, very rare that two blue collar people are married to each other, right? So the percentage of spouses, male or female, percentage of spouses that understand what their spouse is doing, who is in the blue collar, like they don't understand, like when you get home and you're fucking exhausted and all you want to do is like watch TV, or you just want to relax, or you don't have the motivation to clean or cook or whatever it is. Like, these people don't genuinely understand sometimes the amount of labor and mental like work it takes to do some of these jobs. And you're right, like a lot of people don't know. Like, if you're not in a trade, you probably don't really understand. Or if you're not like directly involved with a trade, you probably don't understand how much work people put into their jobs every day. Especially like you think about it, you know, construction people, field techs, stuff like that, they're out in the elements every day. Like, it's bad enough being in a shop with no AC, but then imagine being outside with no shade, out in the elements. It's either shitty weather, it's windy, it's really hot. Like, people don't understand like the amount of grit it takes to do that and stick with it for well over 8 hours a day most of the time.
Yeah, every day, or for 6 days a week. Some people 7 days a week. Ideally 5, but yeah, people who do it have a lot of grit. I think the most eye-opening thing for me is when I actually, sometimes there's a task happening and I have a little bit of time, like I feel like I'm ahead on my schedule, and I'll stop and be like, hey, can I help you with this? Like, can I jump in and do it? So like whether it's shoveling tracks or, shoveling curbs, or, doing, sometimes I'll hop into a machine if there's time and the site allows. And like, it always just puts me back in like that, oh man, this is not easy work. Like, people think that going into construction is the easy way. It's a good way to make money, but it's really hard work. Like, the people who are doing this work are very intelligent, very skilled. And so it's always a really, really good reminder for me when I actually get my hands on something or get to perform a task, like shoveling tracks or shoveling curb, like for 30 minutes, and my back's killing me. And these guys are doing it all day long, every day. And I'm like, holy shit.
Yep.
It takes grit for sure.
Yeah, people don't get it. And it's cool that like you've created this scenario of giving people not only just like the companies a social thing, but the individual people, because especially on like large construction crews or large shops, it's really, really easy to feel like just a number. Especially because these jobs are really fast paced. You know, a lot of these shops, like a lot of the shops I worked in, they were like 3 or 4 months out of work. We had so much work. We had 25 mechanics in the shop and couldn't keep up with the work. So it's kind of hard. Like, it's really easy to lose your individuality in a shop like that. Like, especially if you're not one of the very, very top mechanics, you're probably not really going to get heard, or you're not going to get much recognition. Yeah, I spent a good part of my career as the middleman. It wasn't until the last like 2.5 years of my career that I really got out, maybe 3 years, that I really got into the top level of my shops, to where I was like the top mechanics of my shops. And even then, like, you know, the more you show them what you can do, the more they're going to ask of you. And so the more skilled, people think it's easier once you know more and you get more skills and you can do more and you can do jobs faster, but it's really not. It's not easier, because then you're just shoveled more shit.
Yeah.
Right? You're just pushed more and more and more and more and more. The more you show them that you can eat, the more they're going to feed you. So it's cool that like in your area, you've kind of like you were saying before, you stop and you talk to each individual person and you kind of give them a voice where they probably don't usually have one. Or if they do, like, there's so many guys on social media, and I'll give it to the guys. It's hard to be a man on social media and go anywhere with it. And there's so many guys that make really, really good mechanic content and like share really good tips and like breakdowns and all kinds of stuff. And they don't get the recognition because either A, no one really cares about the industry, or no one really cares what he has to say, but it's also a guy. So it's cool that like you kind of give them a little bit of a voice, because like the people in these industries are so underrated.
Yeah, for sure. It's I like that word, underrated. It's just not, and yeah, it's a lack of value that society places on what it is they're doing in the first place.
Yeah.
And then it transfers over to them. They're just a number to society too, right? It's just oh yeah, there's a construction worker on the side of the road. I'm gonna keep texting or whatever, you know, because it's not, there's no humanizing element. It's just, oh yeah, there's these people who do all this hard work. I don't want to do that. That looks hard. You know.
Well, they view it as like a labor.
Yeah.
Like slave labor in a sense. Like they don't view it as like, that guy's got a badass career and he's working his ass off and he's probably taking home twice as much a month that I am. People don't think that. You know, there's people that I've met that are broke as hell and still look down on people in the trades. Like they're, like you said, like they're dirty, or they're, you know, they're dumb, or, you know, they just picked that because they flunked out of college or flunked out of high school and that's why they're there. And then in reality, that person takes home twice as much as you do with your college degree. Like,
and usually those stereotypes aren't true. I know tons of guys and girls who are in trades who went to college and decided, yeah, no, I don't want to do this. I would rather be outside. I'd rather work with my hands. I'd rather do meaningful work that's tangible, that I don't have to, you know, answer to every single person above me in the office. Like having the flexibility, almost, maybe not flexibility, but having the team element of working outside and working with people, and having support like directly is just so different than what people are typically gonna get when they go somewhere with, you know, an office job.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've watched any of these episodes, and I'm not going to be offended if you say no, but I had a lady on here. She goes by Cummins Cowgirl. Her real name is Chloe Yorker.
I've watched some clips to answer your question.
Yep. Okay. Well, this particular woman, which I did not know this until I got her on a podcast, started off with a college degree, working in a shop as like the DMV lady, like where she would like take their titles to the DMV and stuff like that. We're working in an office.
Yeah.
And she saw the guys working in a shop and she saw like what was going on in the shop. She's like, I want to do that. Like, I want to do that. And she begged her boss for months to let her work in the shop. She's like, please, please let me work in the shop. Please. She tried to be a service writer too. And she's like, no, I want to work in the shop. Like, please let me work in the shop. And she begged her boss for months. And then finally he's like, okay, I'll let you try it for a month. And then 2.5 years later, she was one of the top mechanics in the shop. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, and then she actually quit and started her own shop where now she builds trucks and ATVs and stuff for SEMA and things like that. So yeah, she's badass. So she's another person that like she didn't necessarily have a background in it, and like she was into trucks. She had a second gen Cummins, but that she tinkered with a little bit. But like she said in the podcast, she's like, the one time I tried to work on it, I shocked the shit out of myself because I didn't just disable the batteries and was like trying to work on my fucking was trying to work on her alternator, and she shocked the shit out of herself because she forgot to disconnect the batteries, which, as we all know as mechanics now that we are seasoned, you can be delicate without unhooking the batteries. But obviously she's like, I didn't fucking know. So she went to college for business management. She went to college for all this stuff and started working in a shop, a semi dealership, and then ended up being a heavy equipment mechanic or a heavy truck mechanic. So I also had a young man in the beginning that had no background at all in the industry, and he just like saw classes in high school and he thought he'd try it and he ended up loving it, and then he ended up being a diesel mechanic apprentice. So
yeah, it's so cool though. I think that so many people just don't ever see themselves doing the work. Like you know, there's so many people who would bring so much skill and focus and attention to detail and would enjoy, you know, whether it's working on trucks or whether it's running heavy equipment or whether it's, you know, leadership or whatever it is in the construction world or in the blue collar world. But there's so many people that would really be amazing at it, but they just never take a serious, you know, they never seriously take a second to look at, is this for me? Or what goes into this? Like, what all does this job entail? It's just written off like that because it's not the narrative that was told to them. And it's cool though, because I've been seeing lately with the people that I've talked to, a lot of the younger folks that I talk to are coming from like jobs like Target or Chick-fil-A or things like that, where they just got tired. There was no growth opportunity. They got tired of sitting in an office, or not an office, but like sitting in a retail or fast food or whatever environment. And they said, no, screw this. I'm going to go try something else. I had a buddy who said, hey, I do this. Let me go check that out. And they like the guys, the 3 guys that I'm thinking of in particular, just absolutely love what they're doing. And it's really cool to watch them because they just soak up the knowledge and the information that they can get from the people there. Like if you come into the trades, not only are you going to, you know, have probably a better quality of life because you're getting to not be sitting in a box. I keep saying that over and over again as somebody who spent a long time just sitting in a box and still
speaking from experience though, right?
Yeah. And you know, they went from that to and with no growth opportunities, really very minimal training and kind of a dog eat dog environment of everybody trying to get to that one management position to now they're out here and they're working with guys who've been doing this for 20, 30 years, who are teaching them how to do it well, and they're learning every single day something fresh and new, and like they're excited. You know, these guys are in their 20s and they're excited about what they're doing, which I don't know, you ask a lot of 20-year-olds, 20, 25, 26, if they're excited about what they're doing, and they're not.
Yeah,
I have a lot of friends who are not excited about what they're doing.
I feel that. It's very rewarding work. It might be hard work, and sometimes you might question your life choices, but it is very, very rewarding work. And there's so much room for growth, so much room for pay raises. The industry is hungry for people. And these people that are coming in from like Chick-fil-A and or the ones that are like super young, right? That are right out of high school. These people that are coming in, they're like, I just want to learn everything. Let's teach me everything. They make the best mechanics because they're like fucking sponges. They know they don't know anything. They know they need to learn. If someone knows, if someone feels like they have a lot to learn, regardless of how good they are, if they feel like they still have a lot to learn and they feel like they still have a lot like more to go in their career, they're going to be the best mechanics that you can have because they're constantly absorbing like sponges new information, and they just make so much better mechanics because these people that I've met that came from like some people that I've met that came from like the farm industries, right? Or like they wrenched a lot when they were younger and they just like this is their childhood that they're moving into a career. They've got this chip on their shoulder and they're so cocky that they already know everything and they don't need to learn anything. That it's like then they fall behind. They fall behind the 26-year-old kid, 24-year-old kid that's like still like I want to learn everything, give me everything, and they end up falling behind. You know, I've told the story a couple of times when I started at my first John Deere dealership in Colorado. They sent me to a grader capstone, and I had worked on like 3 graders. I didn't know fuck all about graders. I knew they were cool. I knew the basic concepts, right? At that point, I learned all the basics of like after treatment, engines, hydraulics, hydrostatics, how cylinders work, how the electronics work. I had been to a couple of other capstones on easy machines. So I understood the basics of how the machine worked, but putting it all together into one machine was still kind of a hard concept for me to grasp. But I walked into that capstone knowing that I need to learn everything I fucking can in this capstone. If I want to work on these machines, I need to learn everything that this person has to teach me. And there was an older guy in my class, and he was probably like, I don't know, 55. And he had the attitude of like, well, I've worked on graders for 40 years and I don't fucking have anything else to learn. I've worked on so many of these motherfucking things. He almost failed that class.
Yep.
And I got a 98%. I was the highest scoring person. Now I understand the test. There was hands-on portion of this too. This was not just a written test. And I was the highest scoring person in that grader capstone. I was a person in there with the least amount of experience. And it's not because I was better than them. It's because I wanted to learn and I knew I needed to learn.
Yeah.
Where there's a couple of people like him where they're like, I don't even know why. This is a fucking waste of time, blah, blah. I just give me the test. It's like, you sat through the class and they gave you the test and you almost fucking failed. So now what does that say? Maybe you should have paid attention a little bit. Maybe there was something there that you could have learned.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like make the most of the time that you have, number one, because you're already in the class. Number two, figure you go out the door. Like that's I think at any point in your career you can be learning. And that's what a lot of people tell me they love. Like I meet a lot of 50-plus-year-olds who are out working. There's a lot of 60-plus-year-olds that I meet who are mechanics actually. Yeah. And they're out there. The favorite. I always ask everybody, hey, what's your favorite part about what you do? Like really, why do you like what you do? You know? And if they do, I like people to be honest with me too. Some people just don't, but a lot of people like what they do. And some of these guys most of these guys, the older guys will play. My favorite thing is I still get to learn something new every day.
Yep.
And it's like, damn, you have worked a 40-year career doing the same thing or similar, and you are still learning.
Yep. Well, shit's constantly changing.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, like emissions are changing. The technology and the electronics are constantly changing. There's constantly changes being made to these machines to make them bigger, better, faster, more efficient. There's constantly changes being made. And especially if you work on equipment itself, like I worked for John Deere and I worked on the construction side and the yellow side. And I could not name every single piece of equipment, every model number of every single piece of equipment I've ever worked on, because like tractors have 1,000 fucking model numbers. And then there's combines, and then there's sprayers, and then the construction side is the same way. It's constantly like, not only is there thousands of different types of machines, but every machine is kind of different. Like you get to the excavators in John Deere. And up until recently, they were actually I got a mini argument with the guy at Con Expo over this, because the Deere dealership guy, because he was trying to tell people, or the John Deere representatives, he was trying to tell people that their new excavators are all Deere, and they're not, because they bought some rights from Hitachi. But that's besides the point. Up until a couple of years ago, John Deere excavators were Hitachi excavators painted yellow with a John Deere engine planted in it. Everything else is Hitachi. So there's a difference in itself, right? Then you're not even working on a Deere in a John Deere dealership. You're working on a fucking Hitachi, and then you have to use MP Doctor, and like, so it's a constant learning environment and then have fun, every mechanic that is still in the industry for John Deere, with John Deere's new excavators, because that's going to be a whole nother new thing. They just redid their grading thing like 3 years ago, instead of having, because they've always been numerical and with lettering, right? So like A models are old, B models are old, C models are sort of old, D models are kind of old, and then so on and so forth, right? The further down you get, the newer the machine is. Well, they fucking stopped all of that. So bless you guys that are still in John Deere trying to figure out the new model numbers. But now they removed all of the new model number like letterings behind it and replaced it with E, X, and P, which has nothing to do with the year it was made. Has nothing to do with that. All it is the package that you're getting. E is like economy, P is performance, and X, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's like the biggest and baddest, right? You got all the bells and whistles, you got all the comfort, you got fucking subwoofers in your tractor or fucking loader, shit like that. Like,
all the things you really need.
There's more things that I don't even know about. I left the industry not even a year ago, and I don't know what the fuck they're doing with that. And I was in the industry while those were starting to roll out. So
and that's people look at it and like, oh, it's just such repetitive work. I could never enjoy that. It's like, man, it's not what you think it is. It's not what you think it is. It doesn't matter if you're working on machines where everything's constantly changing, or if you're building subdivisions where, you know, engineering plans are constantly different and everything calls for different size pipe or different cut and fill, different whatever it is. Like there's so much change, and nothing's the same every day.
Yep. That's what I've always told people, is it's very rewarding work. And I've used the same wordage of I learn something new every day. And I like it, you know. I just don't think that people nowadays get the chance to realize that they would like it. You know, like all these classes have been annexed from high schools, and I don't know if annex is the right word. I didn't go to real college, so don't. All these classes have been removed from high school, like welding, and you know, where I grew up, you could start welding class in fucking middle school, and now they don't have welding or woodworking or automotive classes. Like, I had it fucking made when I went to high school and middle school, and all these kids are like, I feel like they're so focused on ACT scores and how to get their kids to have good ACT scores that they're completely missing. Like, to get into a high school that has trades, you have to like be fucking failing normal high school for them to send you to one of these like trade school high schools. And that's so fucked up, because that's teaching kids that like, oh, you're not valued if you're in the trades, or this is not a valuable thing. And it's like, nah, fuck that. Like, you should be praising, send the smart kids over there. You know, the kid that likes to draw in class and not pay attention, send him over there. He likes to do shit with his hands. Let him build shit with metal, right? Teach him how to build shit with metal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is like the only way to fix that is to expose people to it more. And so I think that's the social media play in my mind, is that's where young people are. That's where young people's friends are. So if you have guys that you're highlighting at your company and they're sharing that with their friends and family, their friend group, their network, if you will, that's your next 10 years of workers. That's your
I
next
agree.
generation of people coming in, and they're only going to come in and try it if they know it exists, and the school system is sure as hell not telling them, and their
Yeah.
parents are probably not telling them.
No.
It's just a matter of how do we make people proud of what they do, so that they want to tell their friends. And part of that I like is highlighting the people themselves and giving them something to share.
Well, I think the industry could also do us some favors here, because we're also getting a lot of people like myself who absolutely love what they do and absolutely love their job and love their career, and they have no work-life balance.
Yep.
So they end up leaving the industry. And I think that the industry could maybe work on that a little bit, because obviously don't cater to like the millennial Gen Z thing of like they want to show up at 10 o'clock and then leave at 3. Like don't do that.
Beer cooler.
Exactly. Like don't do that. But the more it's like it's this never ending cycle of mechanics are getting pushed out of the industry because of lack of work-life balance, and then no new mechanics are coming in to replace them. So then these shops get overloaded with work. So then they have to work the workers that are still there even more.
Yep.
And then those workers are like, nah, fuck that. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's like this, it's a fucking snowball effect, and it's just getting worse. I've worked in some shops that are pretty good at that, though. They're pretty good about that. They're good about understanding time off. I honestly believe that every single employee should have 2 full days off of work. Like that is just something that should be mandatory. I don't care what your workload is. Now, if you want to make Saturdays optional for the dude that like doesn't want to be home and lives at work and loves it, then fine. Let that guy do that.
Yeah.
If you got people that if the overtime's there, if you need overtime, the overtime's there, work it. Right? Like I made my top year, I made $78,000. And that, I worked a lot of overtime. We worked 10-hour days. Mm-hmm. And I worked a couple 12s. But the overtime, like more or less story is like, if you want to make more money, the overtime is there. Usually they have bonus programs that are great. That's part of the reason I made $78,000 a year that year, because I had great performance. So I made great bonuses. So there's a lot of potential. And apparently if you work on any side but the agriculture side, you get 2-day weekends. But sometimes that doesn't always happen for the field techs. But moral of story is, I think the industry, like if you are a shop that works your mechanics 6 days a week, I don't care if you have like rotations, or because obviously like some shops need to cover weekend time, right? They need to have the shop open, like rotate that, right? Yeah. Make sure everybody has 2 days a week off consecutively in a row. Like that would make people's lives so much easier, and a lot of people would probably not leave the industry at that. I wouldn't have. There's no way I would have left my job if I was only working 5-day weeks.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, it's a death spiral, right? You get into that cycle of, well, we need more people. Nobody wants to work. We're just gonna work with people we have because we have to keep taking on business. Like we want a business as usual. When really, you have a huge fucking problem with your company right now. If and everybody's experiencing it, but really you're experiencing a really, really big problem. And that's the time when you need to actually slow down and maybe not take on so much work. I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm an idiot. I don't know anything, but maybe you take on a little less work and you figure out how to give your people what they need and take care of them, because that's when they want to actually come to work. People who want to come to work do better work anyway. And also, like I made a post about this a few months ago on LinkedIn, and it was basically I just said, look, you have the opportunity to attract people to the industry and make them excited to come into the industry and help fix the workforce issue. You also have the opportunity with the people that you have today, right now, who are working on the clock at this moment, to drive them out of the industry.
Yes.
Every decision,
I agree with that 100%.
Every decision and policy change you make, whatever, that affects your employees, every amount of time that you do or don't spend with them, or do or don't spend listening to them and giving them, your buy-in, it affects whether or not they are going to stay here, or whether they're going to go and get an office job, or whether they're going to go and work at Starbucks, or whether they're going to go and find something else to do.
Well, there's 8,000 shops. Like every city you move to within a 10-mile radius, there's at least 4 or 5 shops that are hiring. So it's really easy for mechanics, and I've done this, like 1 or 2 times where I'm like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side, because they promise you all this shit, and then you get there and you're like, I should have stayed where I was, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it's kind of one of those things where, like, if they, and we've told this, I've actually had that exact discussion with one of my supervisors where I'm like, hey, you guys are spending all these time and resources on trying to recruit high school kids. Why aren't we spending all this time and resources on trying to retain the mechanics that you have?
Yep.
Because your problem, like, these high school kids are not going to be able to come in and work at your shop right away.
Well, the fact of the matter is, you have to keep the mechanics who are at the shop, because they're the one who's going to teach the high school kids. Are you going to leave your office and teach them when you have a bunch of other shit to do, or are you going to take care of your people so that they can continue to do the work that's, number one, getting you paid, and number two, they can actually teach the people that are coming in, that you're trying to bring in? Yeah, it's a backward cycle.
Well, these shops have, like every other job, right? Shops have atmospheres.
Yeah.
And the boss is a large part of that equation on what the atmosphere is. And obviously you can get some mechanics that are shit fucking personalities and they're just fucking nasty all the time. But that, like, it's almost like a relationship. Like, when you work in a shop, you are in a kind of odd way of putting it, in a relationship with that shop. And if it starts getting toxic as fuck, and you start feeling trapped, and you start feeling like you're not being listened to, you're gonna leave.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously it's like same thing as a relationship. You're gonna sit there and you're gonna fight about it, right? And bring it to your boss's attention and fight about it and bring it up. And then eventually you're gonna be like, fuck these guys and fuck this place. There's 8 other shops here that are hiring. Why am I gonna put up with this shit? So, but it's, again, that death spiral of not being able to retain the people that are in the industry, and then not being able to hire people, which I am all for hiring more people for this industry, because if we could get a solid workforce, that would solve 90% of the issues in this industry. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you don't fix the problems that are at hand, right, you're going to stay in that spiral, right?
Yeah.
If you can't keep people hired long enough, or you can't keep up with all the work that you're doing, you don't have enough people, or your high school programs aren't working and fast enough, or whatever it is, there's not enough people coming into the industry, people don't want to work. If you find yourself saying those things or experiencing those problems, you really need to look at your hiring process for the whole life cycle. You need to look at, are we taking care of our people who have been here for 15 years? Are we taking care of the people who've been here for 10 years? Do people have what they need to have a comfortable life? Like, are they getting paid a good wage? Are they getting the flexibility and the time that they need to take off? All these different things you have to look at. Like, it's more than just money, number one. People care about benefits, especially our generation cares a lot more about benefits than they do about the money. Most people. There's some people who just want to go make a dollar, but by and large, most people I talk to want to find a good company that gives them time off when they need it, and doesn't work them 6-7 days a week, run them into the ground, that kind of thing. But you have to look at your whole process, because if you keep bringing people on, I have a friend, Shauna Armstrong is her name. She does consulting about hiring process, actually, in like the construction world. And she basically put it this way. She said, if you don't fix the process, you're just going to keep bringing people onto the assembly line, and they're going to just keep falling off.
Yep.
You have a broken assembly line.
Yep.
Fix that first. You can't keep hiring more people. That's a Band-Aid, and you're going to keep bleeding.
Well, I always tell people, like younger people, and they're like, I don't know how to choose a job. I'm like, ask for an interview and go in and interview with the boss, and then ask for a tour of the shop. And when you do the tour of the shop, ask every single mechanic how long they've been there, because that will tell you. Like, obviously there are mechanics that are just problem people that just don't stick around for anything because they have really unrealistic expectations. They're fucking assholes. Like, there's bad people on the mechanic side of it too.
That's not just mechanics,
But
that's anybody at any job ever.
exactly. But ask, like, take an average. Like, if there's like one guy there that has been there for more than 10 years, that poor soul just is waiting on retirement. Right?
Yeah.
He's just he's waiting on retirement. He does not give a fuck anymore. He's done. He's like, he's not going to change jobs. He wants retirement. But if there's like a guy that's been there like 10 years, and then a guy that's been there like maybe 7, and then another guy that's been there 4, and then another guy that's been there maybe 15, like that, those are pretty, and then maybe a couple that have only been there a year or a couple of years. That's a pretty good, at least they're holding on to people. If they can hold on to, the way I've always looked at like turnover rates in shops is if you can keep a person for more than 4 years, they're probably not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, like, because mechanics, like I said, mechanics, we're getting job offers from fucking everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to hold on to a mechanic for more than 4 years, you're doing something right. Which sounds sad and doesn't sound like it's that long, but most mechanics only make it 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years tops, in a shop that they're unhappy in.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You can't keep looking at it as and I'm not saying, I generalize when I say this, but I think a lot of companies, owners, leaders, managers, etc., look at, okay, well, it's the employees the problem, right? They're just never happy. It's not good enough here because they want too much. And you just can't look at that, because if you need people, you have to take responsibility at some point and say, okay, I have a problem. I can't just keep blaming the people that come in here. I can't blame every person who walks through the door and leaves because they're coming in and they're leaving. What do I need to do about it? Because it's easy to say, oh man, woe is me, we have a big problem. It's hard to actually fix it and recognize that you have ownership that you have to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, no one's saying cater to the motherfucker that like is asking for unrealistic shit or wants pay raises and hasn't earned them. Right? Like, no one's saying that. I've witnessed that. That's why I use that fucking example. But, you know, if people earn it, the first shop I worked in put on a very high expectation for what shops are supposed to look like for me. It was a pretty happy environment from what I noticed. I actually would not have left if I wasn't relocating back to Wyoming. That's the only reason I quit. Other than that, I loved the job. When I got my like first and second pay raise there, were both $2 an hour. Solid fucking pay raises. And at first I'm like, oh my God, like, are you sure? Like, I'm so stupid. Like, I just started. I'm so dumb and I fuck shit up all the time. And like, I don't know if I deserve this. My boss looked at me and was like, you're worth it. You're like, yeah, you fuck shit up, but you show up every day on time early, and you don't leave early, and you take lunches when you're supposed to, and you try and you put in the effort. He's like, I can give you fucking any machine, and you don't care what it is, what shape it's in, how dirty it is, what the job is, you'll do it. And he's like, that's worth $2 an hour to me. And then the second one came and he gave the same speech, and I started getting this expectation of like, okay, this is what my labor is worth. This is what my work ethic is worth. And this is what my abilities as a mechanic is worth. So then if you go to other shops, like, I've always gotten good pay raises, actually. So I've never really worked in a shop where like they were not happy and I didn't get a good pay raise, but it kind of set in motion the like, you know, you guys need to appreciate, like, yeah, I might not wear my safety glasses all the time, and you might have to constantly remind me to wear my safety glasses, kind of like a child. I know that. But at least I show up, I work hard, and I try. And I put in my effort to this. I don't fuck around on my phone all the time. I'm not fucking around on the computer. Like, I'm not taking 8 breaks a day to go pretend to smoke a cigarette outside. Like, so, but, you know, for the most part, like, but companies need to realize, like you said, it's not just about the dollar amount. Like, make sure these people, like you said, are given adequate time off and given weekends and stuff like that, and benefits and shit like that. If they're a good employee, like, you got to have something set up to reward them more than just a raise. Because unfortunately, in this industry, it takes a lot more than just a raise to keep a mechanic.
Yeah, well, and I know that it's not like, to a company owner, it's like, oh well, you don't know anything about this. Like, I can't just afford to give people Saturdays off, or I can't just afford to do something like that. Just, I think that the moral of the story is look at what you could get from doing something like that, whether it's saving money on turnover, or whether it's doing jobs faster because they're not burnt out, they're not exhausted, or
Yep.
what it is. And then like look at what you can, look at ways you can justify trying, and then take the risk, test it for 3 months, 6 months, see if it works or if it doesn't. I
Yep.
bet you it works though.
I've been a big advocate of, like, if you need Saturdays covered, that's great.
Mhm.
Let some of the people work Saturday and then give them Sunday and Monday off.
Yeah.
Then your days are covered, your time's covered. I tried to convince one of my bosses a while ago. Me and one other coworker pushed really hard to convince him that we wanted to work 4/12s, and then you could split. Like, some people work Saturday
Yeah.
is as part of their normal days, like Friday and Saturday is part of their normal days, and then some
Like
people
3
work
12s and 6s.
exactly, and just like rotate a couple of us. There was
Yeah.
one fucking mechanic in that whole shop that hated the idea and wanted to just stick to his 5/10s. Didn't do it. It's like, okay, so the one dude in the shop who's fucking ancient, let him keep working his 5-day weeks.
Yeah.
If that's what he wants, fine, let him do it. But let the rest of us, like, create. But we were like all excited because we were creating, like, dude, we could have 3-day weekends. Like, I'll work as many hours as you want me to work if I
Mhm.
get 3 hours a week, 3 days of weekends. Like, that'd be fucking awesome. And the boss was like ready to do it because he didn't want to lose his mechanics, and then one mechanic fucked it up. And it's,
Well, and that's the thing, like you're creating when you have something so special when your people actually come to you and say, hey, we want to do this, and you have the opportunity to give them exactly what they want out of the company that they're working for. That is literally, you're not even having to work to give them that buy-in, and you just say, yes, here you go, and they're bought into your company. Like you said, I'll work as many hours as I have to as long as I get this one thing that
yeah,
matters to me. And if you as a company have absolutely any way to provide that, you should, because it's going to absolutely change the quality of the lives of the people that are working there, and therefore they're not going to want to go anywhere because they're not going to find a company that does 4/12s, or whatever
yeah,
it is they're looking for. Like, this is unique. Let them build a unique environment that works for them, and then make it work for your business.
yeah.
um
And like you
so yeah,
said, like, there's nothing wrong with the trial period either. Like, you
yeah,
can try shit. It
yeah,
doesn't hurt anything to try. And if it doesn't work, or shit's not working, or people aren't showing up, or people aren't actually working the hours they said they would, then shut it the fuck down and go back to the way it was.
yeah,
But at least you tried.
yeah. And I think something I really liked about the first shop that you were talking about, the first shop that you worked in, how they just jumped on and said, hey, yeah, here's a $2 raise. And you're like, oh, really? Like, they exceeded your expectation. They invested in you first.
Yep.
Don't wait
I was
until,
fully invested into that shop. They trained me.
okay,
I had great leadership in the shop. Between the foreman was great, the service manager was great, the lead tech that I was working next to was great. I actually worked next to 2 different ones, but they were both great,
yeah,
both helpful. The whole shop was helpful. The whole shop was great. Like, you did not have one mechanic in that shop where you walked over and said, hey, like, and I was young, right? And I was stupid. I asked a lot of questions. And I never had it, obviously every now and then at the shop, so people shit talk, right? They're like, come on, why do I gotta hold your hand? But they're just kidding. They're just being guys. But I never felt like I couldn't ask for help. Even though I was stubborn and didn't want to ask for help because I wanted to be the independent woman and do it by myself, I learned rapidly that is stupid. And everybody was helpful. The whole atmosphere of the shop was great. And I don't know anything about the benefits because I was 18 and still on my mom's insurance. But as far as the bonus program that they had was decent, and the pay was decent, the shop atmosphere was decent. They brought us free burritos all the time. If you worked on Saturdays, like they, on occasion, if they needed to catch up on sales jobs, they would work a Saturday. And they would bring, that was like an immediate free burritos. Like if you came in on Saturday, you were most definitely getting a free burrito. And they knew, which this is what happens when you put ex-mechanics as your leadership in all leadership positions. They knew how far free donuts and free burritos went, and boy did they use that to their advantage. But it worked, right? We're all like, fuck yeah, we get a burrito this morning. Fuck yeah, we get a burrito. We got donuts. Mark Hanna used to make his kids hand us out donuts for fucking Christmas and Christmas cards. His little, like, the owner of the company used to make his little kids like walk around, and it was his way of like showing his kids that this is the workforce behind our company and these are the people that are making it happen. It was a really great lesson he was teaching them. But it was just a great environment, and it's very, very fucking hard to find a shop like that anymore. It's very fucking hard.
Well, it doesn't take much, but if you invest in your people first up front before they either ask for it, right? It's like if you give somebody a raise before they come and ask for it, that's a really good thing. That means a lot to somebody, right? If you go out and you get them donuts or you get them burritos or whatever it is, like, you know the things that they want and you say, yes, I'm going to go give that to them. I'm not going to wait for them to ask me for it, because if they're asking for it, by the time they're asking for it, they have a foot maybe out the door.
Yeah.
Right? If you say no, well, then they've already thought about what their response is going to be to that. Yeah. But if you jump on it first and you say, look, I recognize that I have a really good shop full of mechanics here. They do really great work. What can I do to invest in them first, to show that I have buy-in to them first? Do you know how much buy-in and investment they are going to put back in?
Yeah.
They're going to put back in a lot of buy-in investment, and you can expect that from them. You can set an expectation. Hey, you're going to get 412s. You're going to get whatever it is that you want. I expect you to do the same quality of work, or I expect you to do X, Y, Z. And there might be some people who don't, but there's going to be, I can damn sure tell you that if you have an environment like that where they're getting 412s or whatever it is that they're asking for, but there's going to be a line of mechanics out the door who want to replace the people who are, being lazy.
Dude, if every shop all it would take is one shop to work people 410s or 412s in one city, and every shop around would lose all their mechanics to the one shop that offers 410s or 412s. Yeah. Like that's literally all it would take. But
yeah, just
mechanics are simple creatures. We're simple creatures. Well, we want weekends.
Yeah.
We want money, and we want food.
Make your people's lives better. Yeah. And they're going to be better workers, and you're going to have more people wanting to come join you. If you help people make a better life for themselves, that's what they want. That's why
giving people roles and giving them responsibilities. Like, when I started at the very last construction shop I worked at, it was the same company that I worked for originally. And they, obviously my reputation stuck with everybody that stayed at that company. So when I left the company, the other company to start in their new shop that they were just building, they're like, we want you to be a mechanic here, and we want, like, we're gonna, like, this, there's so much room, like there's a lot of room to grow, like we're starting out with like 4 people hired on, so like there's so much room to grow and stuff like that. And they did, and not only did they make me a mechanic, and I was the only shop mechanic in that shop, I was also like the yard dog, where I checked machines in and out of, for transportation. I helped customers unload machines. If the boss man was out, I was the second in command, so I would take over answering the phones and taking notes and stuff like that. And I would help customers over the phone, and I would pick up the slack if he needed a day off, right? Or he wanted to work in the shop or wasn't available. And it almost gave me a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And a sense of like more responsibility was actually good for me because I thrive in that given the right circumstances. And if it's something I believe in and it's something that like I feel like I've always wanted to run a shop. So I'm like, this is the first steps. And I was really, really, really motivated. And motivated to the point that when that boss quit and moved back to Colorado, I actually ran that shop for 3 months until they got a replacement. And the only reason I was not hired officially as a service manager was because my boyfriend was a field mechanic and they could not have the clash of, I don't know what it's called,
like
but
manager, relationship.
yeah, so they couldn't have one of us in a seniority position over the other person, which is fine. Like I was with this person for like 8.5 years and I'd worked with him in shops most of my career. So they knew we worked fine together, right? They knew when they actually hired both of us from the other shop. They knew they're like, we're not gonna have a problem with these two people working together. We're not gonna have an issue with that. But when it came to one of us being seniority over the other, the regional service manager was actually gonna do it. He was gonna sign off on it. He's like, no, we're good. She's good. We got this. And then the main boss or like the owner and his like right hand man was like, no, we can't do that. Because then we'd have to do it for other people and we can't.
Yeah.
Just because those two do really well together doesn't mean, then we're going to have like, we can't double standard anybody else with family relations or whatever. So,
yeah.
But it made me feel good that like I was actually a considered candidate and the service manager at the time pushed pretty hard to get me hired. But I don't know, giving people like making them feel like they have a purpose other than just turning wrenches is like, let them talk to the customers, let them interact with customers, let them get personal relationships with these customers because they're going to work so much harder when they know the face behind the machine.
Yeah. Oh, that's Johnny's machine. Oh shit.
Yeah,
I want to make sure this is running well for him because I know that he knows who's working on it.
Yeah, and he's good. Like he's cool, right? Like you get much more personal. Like if you allow your mechanics to have a more personal role in dealing with customers, or if you have the opportunity to give someone that is hungry to move up or hungry for work, if you have the opportunity to give them more responsibilities so they feel like they have more of a purpose there and they're working towards their goal, then do it. Because they're going to appreciate that a lot.
Well, and the only way you know who those people are is if you actually take time to sit down and invest in their lives and get to know what it is, what's going on in their life, and what they want to do long term, right? And that I think that's something very simple that goes a very long way. It's like,
well, I mean, every year there's a yearly
go?
review, right? So sit down and actually talk to people, and then have mid-year. One of the shops I worked at also had mid-year reviews. So they had a yearly review where they talked about where you would get a raise or whatever. And then they had mid-year reviews where you would actually just go and have dinner with the service manager, or lunch. It was lunch. You'd go and have lunch with the service manager. Nice. And talk about stuff.
That's awesome.
And I thought that was a great way to approach things.
Yeah.
So obviously that was a very small shop. It would be very hard to justify the cost of taking 25 people to dinner, but that particular shop had like 5 mechanics. But yeah, all the mechanics that worked there quite a long time, and nobody actually, me leaving was like, I felt bad because me leaving that shop, I didn't even leave the company. I just transferred to a different shop so I could work on yellow and green. When I left that shop, a bunch of people ended up leaving after I left. But that's kind of how it happens. That's another thing that shops they don't put value in, is if you have, every shop has a pecking order. Mm-hmm. Every shop is like a herd of horses, or like a pack of wolves. They all have their pecking order. It's like they all have like a leader and like a co-leader, and like they've got a pecking order. And if somebody from your shop that is one of those people that is very highly respected, very highly looked up to, is sort of viewed, even if they're not a leadership role officially, they're kind of viewed like that. if they step out and they're like, this shop's not for me, I'm leaving, you can guarantee you're going to get people following them.
Yeah.
Maybe not specifically following them to their new specific job. Like, it's not that creepy, but there's a lot of people that will leave that company, even if they don't really have the right reasons other than so-and-so left, that it can create a chain effect of people leaving.
Yeah, well, because typically I feel like the reasoning is like, number one, we as humans have a herd mentality, a herd species mentality. Like, and it's not just that we're like, oh, I'm going to follow this person because they're so great. It's just like, oh, I look up to this person and they have reason to leave. Well, let me think about it. Do I have reason to leave? Is there somewhere else that I should be? And it does. It gets everybody else thinking that, kind of whether it's a grass is greener mentality or whether it actually brings up some valid issues with the place they are. Like, oh, did you hear Jeremy left because of XYZ? Oh man, I've never thought about how fucked up that is. Like, maybe I should leave too.
Yep. Well, this particular shop was, it was kind of falling apart when I got there a little bit. And I told him, I'm like, your service manager is kind of an asshole. He's great at his job, but he's kind of a fucking dick. Like, why don't people are fucking pissed off. So why don't you make one of the mechanics in the shop, which we all mutually agreed on, our leader, why don't you make this guy who's a fucking phenomenal mechanic? He's great at what he does. He's a great leader. He's a great person. Why don't you make him like a foreman? Mm-hmm. So he is our line and our defense between the asshole service manager and work getting to us. Mm-hmm. So have the foreman hand out the jobs, or, have him kind of step into some of the things that the service manager is doing that is directly related to the mechanics. And it actually worked really well. They listened and they did it, and it worked really well. And I didn't even leave that shop because I hated it. I left the shop because I was hungry and wanted to work on green and yellow, not just green. And when I left, then that particular leader left within a year. And then once he left, then a bunch of other people left. Yeah. But, which I don't know. I don't know what happened in that shop after I left. I don't know if things because the only reason they made those changes was for me. But I think that the leader left because he was ex-military and he got a management role within the military because he was still in the military. He was still doing shit with, I don't remember if it was the National Guard or the actual military branch that he was part of, but he on his weekends, he'd work on shops. Every now and then he'd work in a shop for a military, and he got offered shop leader position, which paid, I guess, really phenomenal. So he left for that. But after he left, it wasn't even for a bad reason, but after he left, then I guess everybody left. Yeah. So it sucks, but that's kind of how mechanics work.
Yeah. Well, and also I would venture to guess that there's some things that could be in place that would have kept those people, but maybe they realized that he was the only person that would be listened to or something like that, that you can keep people if you give them what they want.
If you got anything else you want to add, go for it. You said you were on social media and stuff like that. So if you want to tell people where they can find you on social media and stuff like that, then you can take the time to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the best way to find me is to just look up Daniel Yates on LinkedIn. That's where I post a lot of stuff, or Blue Collar Brands on Instagram if you're on there. And yeah, I love what I get to do. I'm glad that y'all had me on. Thanks so much for having me on, Melissa. And I think that what y'all are doing is really important. More people need to come in and do this work.